Welcome back, everyone. And we're going to do what is my favorite part of this show, which is answering listener questions. And so my monthly reminder to folks to send your questions into us. You can submit them through our website, getintocollege.com. You can email us gettingin.voiceamerica@gmail.com or drop us a DM on any of our social channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. We're everywhere. Just drop into our messages and we will get to your question as soon as we can. And joining me today is my fabulous colleague, Kyra Tyler. She joined us last month to answer questions and we had so much fun. Kyra had to come back again so we could answer some more. So welcome, Kyra.
Hi, Shannon. Thanks for having me back. This is a blast.
It always is fun. And I should mention Kyra is a former admissions officer at Brandeis, and she is super smart and super tells it like it is. And that is why I love having her to answer these questions. It looks like we've got more admissions than finance questions today. So I'm going to put you on the hot seat for the most part, Kyra, but I think we have one finance question if we want to start there.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we start? I'll ask you, Shannon. Perfect. This is from Rebecca. And she's asking, we have 3 children, grades 12th, 11th, and 9th. We have money in 529s, grandparent is custodian, for all 3 kids. Child number 1 will be attending private out-of-state college this fall 2023 term. The college offers only need-based aid, and the need-based aid presented in their financial aid package meets our EFC, expected family contribution, including the subsidized student loan. We will still have to take out loans, and also my employer offers repayment of a student loan in my name up to $10,000 that we can apply for and take at any time. Child number 2 will enter college in the fall 2024 term, and child number 3 will enter fall 2026. How will FAFSA changes affect us next year? How do we know the best order in which we should use money, and what money or loans to use up front, and what to use down the road as our best financial strategy to optimize our qualification for student aid? How do I find an expert in specific financial guidance for a situation like this who knows the intricacies of financial aid with 3 kids in college at once and with the FAFSA changes just coming? I want to know how this will impact our particular situation. Can you provide any advice or contacts? Woo. Okay.
Yes. So there is a lot going on there. Though, Rebecca, it feels like a lot, but it's pretty typical. Lots of families have lots of different kids and they're going in at different times and they have different sources of money. So even though it's a lot for everybody, everybody's dealing with these questions and how do we manage this and what money do we pull from where? I'm going to punt a little bit on this question to just note to Rebecca that on our next week's show, we are going to be doing a whole segment on FAFSA simplification. And that's what it's not actually simple, but that is the name of what they're calling the big changes that are happening with the FAFSA for this upcoming school year. I think, Rebecca, in your situation, based on the bit that I know here, the biggest changes that are likely to affect you are they are no longer going to be accounting for multiple kids in college at the same time. Clearly, you've got 3 kids here who are all going to be in college at the same time. So you are going to lose the prior benefit of that accounting. Basically, whatever they think you can contribute for child number 1, they also think you can contribute for child number 2 and number 3. They're not going to divide it 3 ways anymore, which is going to be a challenge for many families. I will say that is the change that is happening to the federal financial aid formula. Private colleges often use their own formula. It's called the 2 sort of types of formulas that the colleges can use are the federal methodology, that's the FAFSA, the formula that goes along with it. And there's something called institutional methodology, the colleges that use the CSS profile. It's an extra financial aid application that these private colleges use. The institutional methodology will still, at most schools, likely account for multiple kids in college. So that may affect some of your thinking on the application process of where to apply. There, you may continue to have that benefit of an adjustment for multiple in college at the private schools that use that CSS profile form. At the colleges that just use the FAFSA, you're not going to get that accounting anymore. So that will affect you. On the flip side, something that will benefit you, Rebecca, about the FAFSA changes is there used to be I don't want to say punishment, but an accounting for if grandparents or people outside the main household were helping kids with college. So you say, here, you've got the grandparents own 529s for your kids. That under the old formula, that would have a very, very detrimental effect on financial aid eligibility. Under the new federal formula, they no longer even ask about folks outside the primary household contributing to college, so it will have zero effect. Again, at the colleges that just use the FAFSA, the colleges that use the profile may still ask for that information, may still account for it. So there's some changes, at FAFSA only schools, you may do better on some things. At profile schools, you may do better on some other things. So one reason to have a nice balanced college list that includes all different kinds of schools, and you can kind of see where you end up doing better. With that said, I do think you could benefit from some professional help here who can really walk through your particular situation and what resources you have, and where your kids might be thinking about going. So in terms of like recommendations for an expert, maybe a little self-serving, I would recommend us here at Bright Horizons College Coach.
Agreed.
Check us out. Go to our website, getintocollege.com. If you do decide to look elsewhere, the one really important point I would make that there are many finance experts who are not necessarily financial aid experts. So if you're looking around, interviewing folks about how they could help you, I would really try and get a grasp about whether or not they understand the financial aid system. Ask them about these upcoming changes to the FAFSA and see what they say. See if they are aware of those changes and how they might affect you. So for questions like this, I always recommend going to an expert that has financial aid office experience and understands the financial aid process. But there's a lot going on, so I would recommend seeing if you can get some help from an expert to kind of help you put the puzzle pieces together. And just very quick point, because it sort of jumped out at me, that you mentioned that your employer offers repayment of a student loan in your name up to $10,000. I would just double check on that, Rebecca. The reason I say so is here at Bright Horizons, we have another division besides the College Coach division. We have a division called EdAssist that manages student loan repayment programs for employers. And all of the employers that we work with currently at EdAssist, I should say none of them repay parent loans through their student loan repayment program. They repay loans that employees have borrowed for their own education. It is perfectly possible that your employer does something different, but that is something I would double check on before you're counting on, oh, I can borrow these Parent Plus loans to pay for my kids' college and my employer will pay it back. Just double check that to make sure that they will in fact do that, because most employers do not. So that's just something I would double check on. But a lot going on. Listen to our episode next week about FAFSA simplification. If you want to check out our website, getintocollege.com, and see if we can help you a little bit more personally moving forward, please do that.
Awesome.
And now, Kyra, I've got a question for you. The first one comes in from Jen, who submitted this through our Facebook page. And she says, my student attends a full-time, private, highly respected online high school. This high school has synchronous classes with teachers and students on Zoom, chatting, having discussions, and learning together. So the teachers get to know the kids in the same way they would at a normal high school. I have no doubt they will write excellent letters of recommendation in the major subject areas. However, I know that this delivery model is still new, and there may be some question as to how my child will do in the quote unquote real world. I know that generally additional letters of recommendation are frowned upon, but given my students' unique situation, would they benefit from including an additional letter of recommendation from someone in the local programs they participate in, like the leader of the theater program that my child has done for the last 3 summers? Thank you for your help.
Got it. Okay. So, I like to always think about the instructions around submitting an application, right? So if a school says we want one, please give them one. They say we want two, two is best, right? I do think that there are some situations that call for an additional letter. Um, I I'll be honest, like I think if we had talked about this without the context of a worldwide pandemic behind us, we would have felt like this is like really out of like, oh wow. But that, remember kids applied to COVID without having met some of their teachers in person, and were given, wonderful letters of recommendation. So I will say that I think it can absolutely be done. Sounds like your student is getting a really rich and full education. But just like I tell anybody, at any particular type of school, public, private, online, homeschool, whatever, if you believe that beyond the requirements that are asked for by various schools, your student has additional information to share, it's truly relevant. This
Mhm.
person knows them in a way that these other teachers or trusted adults do not know your student, then I think one is fine, one beyond. But I would really think about like, what does this person have to offer that is not going to be found anywhere else? And if truly the answer is there is something special and additional to share, then go for it. If honestly you think about it and there isn't really anything different, no worries. They're going to be just fine. I have full confidence.
Perfect. So colleges, in the last few years, maybe more used to seeing students who have had online only experiences. So it's
Mhm.
not such an oddity like it would have been a few years ago.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Perfect. Next question comes in from Joe. And he asks, what is the best way to determine what a target school is as a backup for your reach school? This is pretty easy for large state schools, but for a private school like Emory, it is not apparent what school is like Emory, but easier to get into. Most sites just list similar schools that are similarly selective.
Right. Okay. Um, I'm not quite sure, to be frank, like what the difference is between public versus private.
Mhm.
I certainly Ole Miss is not the same as University of Vermont, even though they are both large, or University of Delaware, larger public state universities. But I think this is a great question. Like when I'm helping students consider their list, like they may be stuck, let's say on a school like Emory. That's my dream school. It's what I've always thought about. I'm like, cool, cool, cool. Great. Emory's going nowhere. Let's try to figure out the other Emorys that exist. And so you need to be thinking about attributes that exist within a particular school. Again, let's lean on Emory, that you're trying to duplicate. Is it the size? Is it the setting? Right? Because
Mm,
Emory is very urban adjacent. It has its own campus, but it's in Atlanta.
yeah.
So are you trying to find that? Are you trying to hit the size? Are you trying to find a mid-sized liberal arts university that has a business school? Like what is it? And I would come up with like 8 to 10 of these and
Mhm.
tell your student we're only considering half of those things that are found outside of the classroom. The rest have to be focused in on the academic experience. And then I think that you can probably look on any available search tools that are around. They should be able to give you, it may be, and I don't mean to be disparaging, that's not my intention, but it may be that your perception of similarity around selectivity isn't 2023 selectivity, if that makes sense,
Mm,
right? So I think you want to be mindful of that. the FISC guide to colleges, which we really love. Yes, it's old school and analog, but I think it can be really helpful. Their overlap section is really good because it does have a wide range of schools, and they're really trying hard to help students find an Emory that accepts, let's say, 70% of its applications, not 15 or whatever. So I would say think about the attributes that are most appealing, have an open mind about some school names that perhaps you're not familiar with. That's a really big thing, especially if we're trying to figure out target or safety. These are sometimes schools that live a little bit more in the shadows for
Mhm.
no good reason, except maybe they don't have a phenomenal sports program. I don't know. But so be willing to like explore and look truly into some other schools that you may not be familiar with. The FIS guide is huge. Other search tools that are online, I think, can be helpful as well.
That is great advice. I love thinking of it as not, I like Emory. What are other schools like Emory? But what is it about Emory that you like? And looking for those attributes in other schools that
Yeah.
makes a
Because
lot of sense.
there are other Emorys out there for sure. If that's the kind of school you're targeting, you just have to be open to it.
Right. My favorite quote from you is Emory isn't going anywhere. All right, we got Emory. It's not going anywhere.
Got Emory.
All right, next question comes in for
Yeah.
Rob. It's a short question. We'll see
Okay.
if it's a short answer. In
Okay.
Texas, computer programming is counted as meeting the requirements for language other than English for high school.
Yeah.
How would this impact admissions at a Cal State campus? So this is interesting to me. It's computer programming counts as, what do we call it, a foreign language in Texas?
So I think this is very interesting, right? That computer programming would be considered what we call as a world language,
Yes.
right? We don't even call it a foreign
Yeah.
language anymore. And so here's what I will say. To me, if your student is like college bound, 4 year school bound, and seems to be entertaining places outside of their home state of Texas,
Mhm.
you then have got to, in my opinion, you need to have a world spoken language.
Okay.
And if so, that would be Spanish, French, Italian, Chinese, doesn't matter, any of those. If your school offers ASL, American Sign Language, that can sometimes serve as an alternative, as an additional option as well. If your child requires an accommodation and cannot actually do a world language, then there are other ways, excuse me, to satisfy the requirement or be exempted. So that's my piece about that. Um, to be honest, everybody should be learning a language other than English. I'm just gonna, if you want to go to
Hot
college,
takes by Kyra.
right? Hot takes. If you want to go to college, you should, because even if you satisfy the requirement for admission, you may have to take a language once you're there, right?
Right.
So it would be nice to be able to have some fluency and background, so that you're not starting off day one with something completely new. So that's that. Now the Cal States are like 23 campuses. They have varying levels of selectivity. Cal States can be complicated because they offer admission in the local context. And then their purpose is to serve California residents first and foremost. And then they're looking for, students outside of the local context, still within the state of California, and then also out of staters. So there are a couple of things to consider. My answer is I do not believe it satisfies the requirement. You'll want to guarantee and track, but some of those like A through G requirements that the UCs also talk about also exist within some of the framework around requirements for Cal States. Again, Cal State Fullerton, Cal State East Bay, very different from Cal Poly SLO, right? So part of this really also depends on which Cal State, and to some extent, which major, because some majors are more easily accessible than others. Others can be impacted. So I would definitely say your students should be taking a language other than computer programming to satisfy this. even if it's okay in Texas, if they want reasonable options anywhere else, I would cover my bets and do that.
Makes sense. And we have about 2 minutes,
Okay.
Kyra.
Yes.
Johanna or Rob, what do you think is a quicker one to answer?
I would say Rob.
Rob asks, all the Common App schools on my list are regional public colleges that admit by GPA and dole merit dollars based on SAT score. They all mark the essay as optional. Regardless of self-reflection, is there any real benefit to completing the essay?
Okay. I would always say, do the essay. Why wouldn't you do the essay? Unless there's a reason that
Because
your
it's hard, Kyra.
I know it's hard. But you never know. You never fully know what's going to go into the process of reading unless you're actually in that reading opportunity in that particular year, right? It could be that in this particular year, they're like, you know what? This kid didn't do the essay, and we wish that they would have. And while it's optional, that would have shown us some additional interest and motivation on their behalf,
Yes.
right? Or maybe the essay could be used further beyond from for outside scholarship opportunities. So like to me, I think seems like they're bright, right? Like
Yeah.
I would go through the
For
process
sure.
of doing the essay. And I think you have more to lose, more question marks by not doing it than by doing it.
Yes.
And we want to avoid question marks.
Right.
We
You don't want to
answer all the
wonder
questions. You
if
don't
I
wanna
had
wonder.
written the essay.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So I would write the essay. It's a good question though, Rob.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So I think that's all that we have time for today, Kyra. I'm so sad to let you go because this is so much
Sad
fun.
to go.
Thank you as usual. I hope you'll come back soon.
Me too. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks everybody for joining today. If you did enjoy this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We definitely appreciate all of your feedback. It does help more families find us. So thank you in advance for doing a review. I also want to let you know that you should join us next week. We are going to be looking at pathways to careers in early childhood education. We're going to be talking with one of our colleagues right here at Bright Horizons, who is, of course, a world leader in early childhood education. So we're going to learn about early ed pathways. We're going to learn about what an independent college counselor actually does. What do these people like us actually do for a living? What are we getting paid for, Kyra? We will find out.
Great question.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are also going to learn all about the historic upcoming changes to the FAFSA, known as FAFSA simplification. But here's a little hint, it's not actually that simple. So join us next week, and we are here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific.